Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair, the world's lightest wheelchair, is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Good evening, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of The Breakdown. I'm your host, Greg Cooper, and here on The Breakdown, we deep dive local politics, mainly school boards and city councils, but any and all Johnson County politics are on the table. We air most Thursdays at 5 p.m. You can visit the JoCo Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or to see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com, where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Tonight we're going to dive right into this. It's the 100-pound gorilla in the room. The reality is that Godley ISD and the infamous volunteer with prostitution convictions allegedly. So before we get started here, really, I want to do a shout out to Craig Hunley and his movement for the Central Appraisal District Board of Directors. They're voting tonight in Keene. Hopefully Keene will do the right thing like a lot of other ISDs and city councils have done. Joshua ISD did a great job. A lot of other ISDs did. Most cities have. Cleburne ISD, shame on you. Godley ISD straddled the fence, but Craig's out with his team out in Keene tonight trying to push that, so hopefully that'll go well. But onto this Godley ISD and the infamous volunteer with prostitution convictions. If you don't know by now, Fox 4 News here locally recently broke a story regarding Godley ISD and the events that led to a well-known member of the community having her volunteer status revoked from Godley ISD for being a convicted prostitute. Multiple convictions, if I'm remembering correctly. It went absolutely viral. Local Fox 4 broke the story, but since Fox News National has picked it up, Breitbart News, Yahoo News, New York Post, MSN, among many, many others have covered this story. It's gone international. Even Texas Senator Ted Cruz retweeted the story, which was on Libs of TikTok. And at the time, it had over 1.4 million views. And so he retweeted that. This story's been sensationalized. And unfortunately, the focus has been a lot on the volunteer, her past, and the volume and recentness of those extracurricular activities that she was engaged in. And it's sad, but in today's world, sex sells, because the reality is that's a big distraction in what's been going on here. And we really want to focus on where it needs to be. And that's Rich Dear, the lead learner of Godley ISD, he's the superintendent. That's where the failures are here. And we're going to get into how that happened. But the reality is, it's not about her. It's not about her past. It's about the failure of the ISD to do what they always claim they're doing, which is focus on children and doing the best for children. So the reality is, the focus should 100% be on the ISD, and how a volunteer with her background, which was disqualifying. According to the ISD, they ended up removing her once they figured it out and listened to whistleblowers. They ended up removing her. So, how with her background did somebody end up on so many volunteer positions of influence, access to lots of children, and when it was brought to the Godley ISD superintendent, lead learner Rich Dear's attention, it was like pulling teeth to get the whistleblower complaints to be taken seriously. And in fact, they were discounted and were responded to by lead learner and superintendent Rich Dear, saying they were unfounded. Well, as we all know, these allegations were not unfounded, but were confirmed. And only after a media story was imminent was action taken to remove her from all ISD volunteer positions. The elephant in the room is, what the hell was lead learner and superintendent Rich Dear thinking? What led to him, not out of abundance of caution for the children to act, but to try to discount the whistleblower's claims? Because if he acted out of an abundance of care and caution for the children, he would have erred on the children's side and taken action, or at least suspended and postponed her volunteer capacity while this played out. But that's not what he did. He attacked the whistleblowers, he attacked the school board trustee, and he threw blame. Why? Well, we're going to talk about that today. But because the reality is and we can't forget, is this is 100% about the safety of these children, specifically who Godley ISD allows to have access to the community's children, the most precious resource. Before I introduce our guest tonight, who is Godley ISD School Board Trustee Kayla Lain, I want to lay some groundwork here. So I want to talk about something called the crime of moral turpitude. So what exactly is a crime of moral turpitude? Well, in Texas, solicitation of prostitution is considered a crime of moral turpitude. And crimes of moral turpitude involve dishonesty or morally reprehensible behavior. So do her convictions qualify as crimes of moral turpitude? It's a fair question. The ISD eventually said yes, that these qualify because they removed her from these positions. Only after they were forced to acknowledge her actions did they remove her. And how they handled this and what it actually took to get lead learner and superintendent Rich Dear to take action, it's absolutely inexcusable. Godley residents trust this man with their children, and he and the ISD, that they failed miserably. Basically, what happened is this local volunteer engaged in extracurricular activities. She raised some flags with people in the community who basically decided to figure out some of the stuff she was talking about involving numerous businesses. And they basically did a very simple search. And in that search, it showed up that she had 4 criminal arrests, and one was for prostitution, a Class B misdemeanor. And then there was another one that was a Class A misdemeanor of prostitution because she'd had previous convictions. Those were in 2012 and 2016. And a lot of that is where some of the confusion's coming, because people are saying, "Oh, that was so long ago in her past." This individual who was volunteering at the schools in a capacity close to children was active as recently as October 2023. Anyone that lives in Godley knows that a local restaurant just redid their entire wall with a nice, wonderful mural highlighting the community. She was using pictures in front of that wall. To highlight her extracurricular activities September 21st, 2023. Her most recent review on one of the websites that reviews individuals that engage in this type of stuff was May 2023. By the way, there was 59 reviews just on that website alone. Now, I don't know anyone here that has a business, but what percentage of people that frequent a business do reviews? She had 59 on one site, most recent, spring 2023. So any thoughts about that this was not current, ongoing, and a massive factor in her life, considering that in 2022, she was ranked number 3 in Dallas-Fort Worth area? That's just absolutely incorrect. Period. So our guest tonight is Kayla Lain, Godley ISD School Board Trustee. She was part of the process, part of the solution, and she was treated terribly during this process, especially by Godley ISD Superintendent Lead Learner Rich Dear. Kayla, you've been on this show a bit. You're one of the few elected officials that really is open to the community. I want to thank you for that. What the heck is going on in Godley ISD? How did you go from a newly elected trustee to trying to solve a problem with volunteers to one of the most viral stories out there right now? How did we get to this point?
Well, to really understand the response that I received from the superintendent, Dr. Dear, I have to back up to when I first encountered an issue with him. I first got involved in Godley ISD during the mask mandate and had shared or tried to share my concerns with forced masks on children's at several school board meetings, and I was unable to do so because it wasn't on the agenda. I went to a PTO meeting. I was told I couldn't speak there. That's a parent-teacher organization. You'd think that you could share your concerns about your kids in school. At a PTO meeting, was told there I couldn't talk about masks. So finally, it led me to create a petition, and I got over 300 signatures of other parents in Godley ISD. And I was at a meeting at the beginning of April, a school board meeting, and I was told once again I couldn't talk about masks. It was not on the agenda. However, as I sat there watching the school board meeting, they started talking about masks from the dais. And so I stood up and I said, "Excuse me, but I have been asking for months to speak about this issue. I've been denied the opportunity to speak because it wasn't on the agenda. But here you are talking about masks from the dais." I said, "All I want to do is give you this petition of names I put together." And he said I could give it to the assistant, which is Jason Carnes. So I walked it up and gave it to him. About 10 other parents and myself stayed until midnight that night trying to speak to Dr. Dear, and he was intentionally avoiding us, kept peeking behind the curtain to see if we were still there. And so that began a never-ending issue with him not wanting to hear from parents, changing the rules of sign up at school board meetings for parents to speak. And then most recently, the new policy that I was adamantly against at the last school board meeting, which limits the freedom of speech even more. But he allowed a constant issue that he's had with me as a person and a personal vendetta and issue that he has with me to come and to cloud his judgment as to how he should handle this topic. this was brought to my attention. I did not find this information. A whistleblower in the community brought these allegations to me. I got Families Engaged involved because they're a parent advocate group that has been an advocate for me on several grievances in Godley ISD.
Real quick. So Families Engaged for Effective Education, our Families Engaged for Effective Education. This is a group that goes across the state and educates, communicates with, and enlightens many members of the community and deals directly with a lot of state legislatures in Austin. This is a well-rounded group. So this is a well-rounded group that has respect across the state and especially in Austin. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's a little mom or two here running around like crazy. This is a very well-established organization. So
yeah, and I found them because I was looking for a parent advocate for my grievance hearings. Because what I didn't know is that the district has attorneys that come on behalf of the district and they lawyer up against the parents during their grievance hearings. So not Moms for Liberty, Families Engaged worked with me on these grievance hearings. And so they helped with this investigation. First of all, I wanted to find out, is these allegations about this lady, this volunteer, this community member, are they true? I wanted to make sure that she wasn't being catfished, right? And so they are the ones who found the background, the criminal history, the arrests. They found that her name was verified with the email address, so it really was her. They found the Twitter, they found the escort sites. And so they had all of this investigative information put together and they would not release it to me. And so I arranged a private meeting with Dr. Dear so that they could present their information and their evidence to him and give him an opportunity to address this issue, to fix it, rather than blow this up in the media.
So let's capture all that real quick. So a whistleblower in the community had red flags raised, brought it to the attention of a few people, you being one of them. Families Engaged got involved. They began to follow through with this. Once there was evidence that was overwhelming and that she was engaged in this currently, you decided to take that to the school district, to the lead learner, superintendent, the man who the first thing and last thing out of his mouth every time he speaks is care and well-being of these children. Is that correct?
Correct. And this was only a several day process. I found out about this on a Saturday, and by Wednesday, I was having a meeting with the superintendent. So we did not drag our feet on this. We made sure that we investigated timely and quickly, and I demanded to have an immediate meeting with the superintendent because it was a sensitive, urgent matter.
So you call for a meeting. It took a day to get everybody involved because you didn't have the evidence to get to the meeting. So now you're at the meeting. So you show up at what's known as the fishbowl or the district office at Godley ISD. You're downstairs in the office, in the waiting area, and you get there. What happens?
So I did not have the packet of information. I had not even seen the evidence other than a Google search. And so I needed for Dr. Dear to meet with Mary and Marcy from Families Engaged because they had all of the evidence. So when I get there, we all check in, and then he calls down to the little front desk lady and lets her know that he will only meet with me, that he will not meet with Mary or Marcy.
So people are here to bring information and evidence regarding child safety and access to children that is against the policies of Godley ISD. They're there at their appointment time, and he's refusing to meet with them. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. And so
what happened then?
So I go up and I meet with him, and I am very firm, and I let him know that I do not have the evidence. I'm not going to tell him what this is regarding until he sees the evidence, because I do not want it to be said of me that I'm slandering an individual. And so without him looking over all the evidence, I was not going to tell him what it was about. But I did let him know it was a child safety concern. It was about safety and security, and that it was imperative that he meet with these two ladies who had this information. I also let him know that these two ladies were more than willing to go to the news media if he refused to meet with them. And so after a 5-minute back and forth of me basically begging him to meet with them, I said to save yourself, because if they go to the media and you had an opportunity to meet with them and you didn't, it's going to look very bad.
Well, and here's the reality of it. There's some disconnect with some ISDs, and Godley ISD is one of the worst. Nobody expects an ISD to be perfect. For some reasons, ISDs feel that they need to project an image of perfection. It is not how imperfect you are. It's about how you deal with issues as they're brought to you, how you address them, how you move forward, how you evaluate what you've done good, evaluate what you've done bad, figure out a path moving forward for the betterment of all. But you have to address issues when doing this. And this is common with Rich Dear. He will very gently, in the infancy of something, begin to deal with it. And then he shuts down, puts up walls, and he just avoids like the plague. And there's numerous things in the community, we're not going to go in those today, but that have gone down bad roads. And here you are as an elected official, campaigned on transparency, bringing people that want to make him aware of something, and he doesn't want to do this. So now you're upstairs trying to convince him to meet with them. It looks like you're going to get that meeting. What happens from there?
I forgot to mention too that he looked me in the eyes and he said, "I don't want to meet with him, Kayla." And I said, "I can see that. However, they have the evidence. They want to show it to you so that you have an opportunity to address this within the district. And if you don't meet with them, they will go to the news media. It will look very bad for you. It will look poor on this district. And so I'm urging you to meet with them." So finally, he allows them to come up and they present all the evidence to him. They let him know that he can make copies of anything, that he can take pictures of anything,
So,
but he can't have their packet because they didn't have a copy.
okay. So they bring a packet of their documents. They show him and allow him to make copies, take photos. What does he do with that stuff?
Multiple times they tell him, you can make a photo, you can take a photo with your phone of any of this, you can make a copy. He did not do any of that. And so then he comes back in an email to me and tells me and accuses me of withholding information.
How long after this? So the meeting ends. He does what he does with the evidence that you're not going to leave it to him. He doesn't make copies. I think he took a copy of one or some picture of one.
I think he might have taken a picture.
So
of
the
one.
meeting ends. You say, "Hey, I need to hear back from you."
I let him know that I expect to hear back on Friday. This was a Wednesday when we had our meeting. I let him know I expect to hear back on Friday of what his intentions are.
And then what happened?
And so Wednesday, right after we left the meeting, I sent him an email, and I just a follow-up email, and I reiterated again, I expect to hear by Friday what your intentions are and what you plan to do. Friday afternoon, I have not received a response from him. So I sent him an email basically letting him know that no response is a response and that he had a legal obligation to act on the information that I presented to him. And then that was a Friday. Sunday morning, I get an email from him. He copies the entire school board and he accuses me of withholding information. He accuses me of refusing to give him information. He claims that I have hampered their investigation. And he also claims that they have been unable to substantiate my claim. And so I send a response and I ask, because I'm an elected official, I cannot send it to more than 2 other board members because including myself, if there's more than 3 board members involved, it's a quorum. So I send a reply to 2 board members and the superintendent and also his assistant. And I ask for her to send my reply to the entire board so that they can know what my response is. I correct several suppositions that he made in his previous email that were incorrect. And the superintendent's assistant doesn't send my response to the board, to the rest of the board. So unfortunately, the board has one side of the story, and
that's typical. That's a pattern.
Mhm.
That's a pattern of behavior with this man.
Yes, and I had audio recorded that meeting. It was no secret that I was recording. Mary told him that we were recording. He was also recording that meeting, and I went back and listened multiple times, and there was about 3 or 4 times where we told him that you can take pictures, you can make copies. They told him exactly how they found this evidence, where he can go to look, what websites to look. He took notes. So it was completely false that we withheld information from him. And it was completely false that we were uncooperative and that we were unable to cooperate in the investigation, because Marcy also sent several follow-up emails to him and to Brian Hunt offering information. After I received my email, I let Marcy know that they felt this way. So she emailed Brian Hunt and Dr. Dear and said,
Brian Hunt's the director of safety and security.
So she lets them know that, hey, I hear that you're having a trouble finding this information. I'm willing to help you. Please reach out to me if I can send you anything. No response.
So here we are. Evidence was brought to the superintendent. He is now attacking the whistleblowers and saying that basically they're crazy for what they're saying and it's their fault. However, she's removed. So what transpired?
Well, no, she wasn't removed.
Or let me rephrase it. She wasn't, but she's removed now. So what transpired from when he was attacking you, blaming you, and saying that this was all unfounded? What led from that point to where she was actually removed from that point? So right now he's saying you're crazy.
Yes.
And absolutely disregarding you and pretty much making you look like crazy woman running around. But action was taken. So what led up to that?
So during this time, I call the Texas Rangers and I let them know what the issue is. I let them know the response that I received from the superintendent and that I was concerned regarding this issue. I let the Texas Rangers know that the ISD does have their own ISD police force. And so I didn't know at that time that I could go to any other outside jurisdiction because, to my knowledge, the ISD police, the head of that is the superintendent, and there is no higher jurisdiction. However, the Texas Rangers did let me know that because the ISD is within city limits, I can go to Godley PD. So we go to Godley PD. Marcy,
so you're doing everything you're going everywhere you can to try to get resolution for this.
Yeah, I'm going around the superintendent and trying to get this resolved because it was a safety concern.
Because he's washed his hands of this.
Yes.
Now remember, abundance of caution should be erred on the side of the children, and you can't talk to this man without talking about how much he cares for children. That's the reality of it. So you've got Texas Rangers, Godley PD. You're trying to figure this out. What happens?
So we go to Godley PD. Marcy gives Godley PD all of the evidence that she has. Godley PD tells Marcy, I believe this was about a week after we first met with Dr. Dear when we went to Godley PD. Godley PD, the sergeant, tells Marcy to contact Chief Quinteros from the ISD police herself and to not to take Dear's word for it that he contacted him. Godley ISD on their website, they don't have contact information for their ISD police chief. So there's no way of getting in contact with Quinteros. So Marcy left several messages on the general admin voicemail to speak to Quinteros and was having a hard time getting in contact with him. So
we'll pick it up after the break. We'll be back after the break with Kayla Lain, Godley ISD Trustee.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Welcome back to the breakdown. Greg Cooper here. We air Thursdays at 5 p.m. We are here with Godley ISD Trustee Kayla Lain, school board trustee, recently elected last May. Before we get back into this, I want to remind everybody that JoCo Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch. And the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at JoCoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And as this weather chills, don't forget to dress your arms and more at the Tiffy.com. So we're here with Kayla Lain, and we're talking to her about the events that led up to the removal of a volunteer who should have never been volunteering. Involved with crimes of moral turpitude, involved with had convictions for prostitution, and was very recent in this type of behavior. So before we get back to where we were with talking to the police department, because Godley ISD lead learner Superintendent Rich Dear failed to take the allegations seriously, tell us exactly how much contact this volunteer had in Godley ISD.
It was during this time that I found out that she was on the SHAC committee, which is a school health advisory committee that determines health curriculum and also sex ed curriculum. And she was seen in the video for that October SHAC meeting. Also in the minutes, she was listed as a committee member. She was not voted and approved in September when the school board voted and approved the SHAC members. But I was made aware that she was on the SHAC committee. She was also on the long range planning committee, which is the bond planning committee. She was on the PTO.
She was president. I heard of the PTO for school or something.
I'm not sure. I know she was involved with the PTO. I heard that she was a room mom in one of the classes that her daughter was in kindergarten.
She stood up a reading group, parents reading group. But I mean, these are great things. Mm-hmm. But the question is, should she been doing it?
And then she and her husband both bragged about the many hours they spent volunteering in the schools. So there was definitely access to children there. So since the superintendent was uncooperative with me and refused to take this allegation seriously, I went above him and I went to the Texas Rangers.
Real quick, Kayla. Marcy Gale's calling in from Families Engaged. We're going to have her chime in here because she was an integral part of this. Marcy, you there? It's Greg Cooper from The Breakdown.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, how are you? You've been listening.
I'm doing okay.
You can pick this up from your perspective as one of the ones that brought this to lead learner Rich Dear's Superintendent of Godley ISD's attention, if you'd like.
Okay.
So we're just talking about how when Dr. Dear refused to take the matter seriously and to act, I called the Texas Rangers, who then told me I needed to go to Godley PD. And you went to Godley PD and then you can talk about what happened.
Right. Okay. So, yes, once it became clear to me that Rich Dear and Brian Hunt were going to be shooting the messenger, so to speak, they kept, saying that they didn't have enough evidence, they didn't have enough information. So when I reached out to Rich Dear on the Monday following the Wednesday that we met with him, I reached out to him on Monday to see what other information he thought he needed. And I didn't get any response back from the district until Friday, late afternoon. And that's when I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and take this on to the local PD. And if necessary, and I had planned to go ahead and take it on to the sheriff's office as well, because it was obvious to me that the district was not doing anything about it.
So how did it? So you obviously have many points of failure here, and definitely not putting the safety of the children and the environments. And another safety issue we should talk about is with volunteers that aren't cleared. Is what about the teachers? Like the teachers are all assuming that these individuals are cleared of some of this too. But so you take it to the police department. They give you guidance. And we're still trying to get this individual removed. And according to the ISD, their background check or their investigation is concluded and everything is unfounded. So what happened from that point on?
Well, what happened from that? So late Friday was when I finally reached out to Chief Cantrell, and then Saturday was when I met I met with another officer at the Godley Police Department. I then reached out to Officer Quinteros, Chief Quinteros, at the district the following Monday. And as of Tuesday, it seemed like the situation had been taken care of. So it all seemed to happen very quickly once I brought the matter to the local PD. I mean, that's my perception of how the entire process transpired. And once I had, two different communications with Officer Quinteros, he assured me that the situation had been taken care of.
So when you met with Chief Quinteros, and so Chief Quinteros, for those listening, he's the Godley ISD police chief, and he answers directly to Superintendent Rich Dear, and all law enforcement matters are supposed to go through the chief of police of Godley ISD, Chief Quinteros. So
correct, which was why when we met with Rich Dear almost 2 weeks prior on that Wednesday, I specifically made it clear that I wanted Rich Dear to reach out, that my expectation was that he would contact his police chief of the district within 24 hours. And that did not happen.
Well, and anybody with half a brain can draw the conclusion that somebody bringing allegations to a volunteer who shouldn't be there, that has criminal convictions, needs to have a law enforcement lens look at that and verify it. So the very first phone call lead learner Rich Dear should have made was to his basically hand-chosen police chief. And you found out that happened how much time after the interview, according to your conversation with Chief Quinteros?
According to my conversation when I finally got to speak with Chief Quinteros, and I just like to point out that I think he did a really good job. I feel like he was very professional about all of it. My experience with Chief Quinteros was a very good one.
Good.
So having said all of that, I did ask specifically when he had been notified by the superintendent, and he responded sometime last week, which when I first met with the superintendent, it was on a Wednesday. My expectation was that the chief of police would know at least in 24 hours, not, the next week, even beyond that weekend. Well, and like I said, the whole overtone from the district, and this is what parents need to really be concerned with. You had whistleblowers go to the district in good faith with what we felt was very valid data, and we ended up feeling like we were being ignored. The district did not take immediate action. Then instead, what they did was they blamed us for somehow, we're just private citizens here. And what I wrote in an email when I finally, took the matter to Chief Cantrell with Godley PD was, hey, look, we're private citizens. Why hasn't anybody in law enforcement actually done their due diligence on this matter and taken care of it? I mean, the whole point in the very beginning was the safety of the kids. And with all that Rich Dear always talks about, safety of the kids this, safety of the kids that, that's his primary concern, supposedly. I did not get that feeling at any time during this process.
Well,
I felt like he was intentionally dragging his feet.
Well, and I mean, you guys brought this to lead learner Rich Dear's attention on a Wednesday.
Correct.
On Friday, he hadn't responded. A trustee, an elected official, reaches out to him and says, hey, where are we at with this? This is like time sensitive and involves children's safety. On Sunday, he informs her and the rest of the school board that everything is unfounded. And then when you meet with his chief, according to the chief, he hadn't even been notified between that Wednesday and Tuesday because of the way the timeline has, the amount of time that has passed.
Correct.
And that's absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And Marcy, you deal with a substantial amount of elected bodies, whether it be in Austin, whether it be people running for office, people elected to office, and you deal with tons of city councils and tons of school boards. How often do you get this kind of pushback from a superintendent and an overseeing entity like this? How often is it this difficult?
I have to say there are only two school districts that I have seen rogue superintendents thumb their nose at elected officials. And those two school districts, I hate to say it, are Godley and Granbury ISD. Godley ISD and Granbury ISD.
I appreciate your time, Marcy. I know that you're having a celebration today, and I hope that goes well.
Sure.
Is there anything that you want to add? Anything else that you want to add before we let you go here?
I do want to add that Families Engaged for Effective Education. So the group that I work and volunteer with, I want to say we never intended for this to be focused on one individual. The focus of this entire ordeal shows that there's a flaw in the law, in the education code, and also in the penal code, where when you have people involved in the sex industry, in any form of sex work within the sex industry, there must be a registry, not just when an adult, performs a sex act with an underage child. It just needs to be a registry, and all school districts need to understand exactly who is coming into the campuses with these young kids on a volunteer basis.
I agree.
Did y'all already go over that, or
no? We're gonna get to some of the holes in ed code here. We're gonna end our show at that. So we haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay, great. All right.
But we're definitely going to talk about it because there's some massive points of failure here.
Right. So thank you, Greg, so much. I appreciate your show. I appreciate all of your efforts. And I want to just plug, Kayla Lain as being the proactive school board trustee that parents really need to give kudos to in this whole situation. She was concerned very much with the student safety.
I agree.
So thank you for that, Kayla.
Thank you, Marcy. And I want to apologize for the personal attacks that Families Engaged has had and how the blame was redirected to the whistleblowers. I'm very sorry. And I appreciate
Oh, well,
everything
you have
that
nothing
y'all
to be
do.
apologetic for.
Well, I appreciate everything that y'all do. Y'all give of your time freely, and you do this without pay because you care about the kids and you care about public education. So thank y'all
We
so
do.
much.
Take care
Yeah,
and
we
have a
do.
great Christmas, Marcy.
Okay. Thanks a bunch. Y'all Merry Christmas.
Merry
Thanks.
Christmas.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's Marcy Gale. She was intimately involved with this whole process. Real quick before we move on to the points of failure here, Kayla, anything that she missed, that pretty much wraps up a perspective because a couple people involved in this. But the reality of this is does anybody know? So Rich Dear, lead learner, superintendent, Godley ISD, said in a statement to the news in response to this that Godley ISD uses DPS for criminal background investigations, and this didn't show up, and that's a problem. So, have you, as a trustee, as an elected official, as one of the individuals intimately involved with raising this question to Godley ISD, do you know, or have you seen, or have you been made aware of where the points of failure were, or what the background investigation showed?
I do not know. I have not had an answer to that. I still do not know what our background checks show.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to background checks, and why? Because this highlights the point of failure.
I do want to just mention really quick that Chief Quinteros with the ISD police was not notified by Dr. Dear for a solid week after we brought these allegations to him. And the whole reason they went to an ISD police, as Dr. Dear said, was so that they could have someone more available to address child safety. And that was a big failure on his part. Chief Quinteros should have been his first call. Instead, he attacked whistleblowers.
I agree. I had a problem with the ISD over the ISD police department. It was, I took some heat thinking that I was attacking the Quinteros family, and it wasn't. It was the process that happened to occur. That you're right. You call it. You're the CEO of Godley ISD. You have department heads. If you have a curriculum issue, you call your curriculum person. If you have a maintenance issue, you call your maintenance director. If you have a transportation issue, you call your transportation director. If you have a law enforcement issue, you call that ISD 911 and you talk to your law enforcement officer. You failed, Rich Dear, and it's shameful as much as you want to talk about how much you care about these kids. And then, so where were the points of failures? There's only 3 things that could have happened here. 3 things. She who will not be named, because she's now trying to monetize and profit off of this, the volunteer with the convictions, she either completed a background check and it came back clear. That's bad because she has convictions. She completed a background check. It showed the convictions and the ISD disregarded them. That's extra bad. Or they didn't do a background investigation. Nothing other than one of those 3 things could have happened. They did one and it was clear. They didn't do one, or they did one and it showed the convictions and they disregarded. So during the news interview, and Rich Dear responded, he said, DPS does our background checks, doesn't show misdemeanors. The reporter on the news clearly stated that DPS does show misdemeanor convictions. So we're going to have another guest sit in here. I'm going to plug her in here. This is introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are here as we wrap this down before we get into
I'm Tiffany Carlin. I'm a host of another show here, but first and foremost, I'm a concerned parent and I'm a taxpayer. And I'm listening to the whole show while I'm driving, and first of all, Kayla, I want to say that you are a rock star, because it takes a lot of guts, not just to run in the manner that you did, but to stay with it after being harassed by your own superintendent, being bullied by your own superintendent. And so part of my concerns when I'm looking at this is several questions. We have a problem with superintendents thinking that they are above the board. They think, and I'll speak directly to Mr. Dear, the board does not answer to you. You answer to the board, and then you answer to the parents and the citizens who pay. We pay. I'm a Johnson County resident, right? Johnson County residents pay your salary. You do not own the school district. You do not have rite of passage to just go do whatever you want to do and then not be held accountable for your action or lack of action as a superintendent. It's an upside down pyramid. And most parents don't think about this. They don't think about, right? Everybody looks at the pyramid or who's in charge or who's at the top.
The task organization,
right?
How it's task org now.
Right. So you want to look at it like it's a pyramid, and the superintendent thinks he's up here, but it's flipped. And that's a problem with all of our local government. They think they're in charge, and that's where parents and what these activist groups are doing, what you are doing, Kayla, and other people who are running for office like this and getting in, is using your voice and using your rights to say, no, you are not in charge here. And it's time they wake up to guess what? This isn't going to stop, Mr. Dear. This is not going to stop. People are going to get louder and louder and louder. And guess what? I, as the owner of this station, am going to give them stage right here to do so, because he failed. He failed big time. First of all, his lack of respect for Kayla Lain is unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable to ignore her. And so my question is, why? Why?
She specifically ran on transparency,
right,
and making the parents and citizens access to the school district and that communication better.
Right.
And they immediately began to go down a road to stifle that.
Well, it's stifling her. And now I see that they're stifling more parents. They want to stifle the community, or at least try to. And
two have received threatening trespass warning letters in the last couple weeks.
And that to me needs to go to the Texas AG. That is a violation of our right to freedom of speech. They cannot stop anybody during open session from talking about anything they want to during that 3 minutes that's allotted to them. They cannot stop them. If they want to bitch because they haven't gotten a response from Dear or someone else, they have a right to do that. If you're not going to hear me or respond to me in an email, by God, you better do it publicly.
So
I'm a little hot.
No, you are, but check this out real quick.
Because I have my own experiences here in Burleson.
Do you want to get more? You want to get more angry?
Yeah, give it to me.
Let me ask you a question. Do volunteers have to have background checks at schools?
They should.
You ever read the ed code? Because guess what I did?
It doesn't say it.
Oh no. How about this? Subsections A and C, that's who was required to have a background check, do not apply to a person who volunteers or is applying to volunteer with a school district if the person is a parent, guardian, grandparent of a child who is enrolled in the district or the school. We're going to close our show with this today.
So that's where the driver's license thing.
No.
We show our driver's license as a parent, or you're an authorized person to pick up, drop off, do that kind of thing right at the schools. Mm-hmm. If you're volunteering, especially in a committee like SHAC, you absolutely should at least by just sheer, take the law out of it for just a minute. You're the superintendent or the board. You should be putting together a questionnaire for anybody who wants to come on. If you're not going to do a background, or if you're doing a background, there should have been a thing put in front of her that said, have you ever been arrested? Yes. What were you arrested for? Were you convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony? These are simple questionnaires that could have helped them avoid all of this. But bigger than that is this. Mr. Dear knows this woman.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Dear knows this woman. So, and this happens, and this happens with a lot of superintendents, right? And because I've watched it. They come into a small town, and guess what they do? they make friends with the change makers, the influencers. Let me take that back. They make friends with influencers. They make friends with, the people who they know that they can charm, and then they get them to run for their board, right? And then the board falls in line thinking, this is what we're supposed to do. We're robots for the superintendent. No, you are not. If you are not doing things like Kayla Lain's doing, you are failing at your job.
They just wrapped up the Long Range Facility Planning Committee. Huckabee, an architect, ran it, and they actually gave them titles. What were those titles, Kayla?
Ambassadors.
They're ambassadors. So this is how it works.
To sell the next bond.
This is how it works.
Yes.
I was on the bond committee for Burleson. It didn't dawn on me until afterwards that I was chosen because I was an influencer, right? They wanted me to use my influence, and knowing that I'm going to advocate for them. But I'll tell you what, it was not one of the architects who has to bid for the job running it. That is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
So they've already won a bid that hasn't even gone out yet. One of the biggest school architects, ISD district. I think Huckabee did Kerr. I'm pretty sure. Let me tell you, I got a list of people that they wanted me to call to be donors for the PAC. Okay, for our bond when it happened. That list was given to me by then Burleson ISD board member, Senator, Beverly Powell. Here, call them, and guess who was on that list? Okay, tons of the architectural companies that would be bidding on the job. And guess what? They wrote checks.
Godley ISD had their SPAC for their last $889 million bond. And we're getting off track real quick. Had 3 donors. All were builders. All were Huckabee. Not one citizen donated it. 3 builders and contractors did it. So Kayla, what do you think about? Here's Miss Carlin coming in here. Has the flagship slow in here on Joco Radio. Drove in here because she heard your show and your story. We're getting close here to the end here. Let's wrap up with you. What are your thoughts on this? Where do we go from here? How do we find out specifically if they're doing background checks, if they're following it, and what happened with who shall not be named, who is now profiteering off of this? Those who wanted to defend her, saying this was in her past, she's now profiteering.
I'm going to want to hear more about that. But why don't you guys come join me Tuesday morning on Joco Vibes to continue this conversation?
Well, and just one thing I want to say really quick is next Monday, December 11th at 5:30 p.m. at Godley High School is Dr. Dear's superintendent evaluation. There will be public comment. Make sure to come and comment. If you think he failed in this situation, share that during public comment. Monday, December 11th at 5:30 at Godley High School.
And yeah, we will come on your show.
All right, Tuesday morning. See you guys there, 9 a.m.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio. Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Design.